We've got breaking news out of Miami, and this one came right as we were about to wrap things up. So let's dive right in. The Dolphins have officially added tight end Greg Dulcich to their practice squad. Now, Dolphins fans, this is an interesting pickup. Dulcich, a former third-round pick out of UCLA, was with the Giants this preseason and really turned heads. In limited action, he hauled in 7 catches, 3 of them for touchdowns, showing off that red zone ability that Miami has been looking for at the tight end position. With the Dolphins' tight end room needing a little more depth and versatility, this move makes a lot of sense. Just to give you some perspective, Miami had a couple of open spots left on the practice squad. With Dulcich signing on, that number is now down to just 1. So it'll be fascinating to see who fills that final spot. But for now, Dolphins fans, welcome Greg Dulcich to Miami. Before we get into the rest of today's roster moves, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Earlier today, Miami also made another notable addition, this time to the active roster. The Dolphins claimed cornerback Julius Brents, formerly of the Colts. Now this is particularly interesting, because not only is he a talented young defensive back, but he also comes straight from Miami's Week 1 opponent, the Indianapolis Colts. Brents was a second-round pick in the 2023 NFL Draft out of Kansas State. At just 25 years old, he still has plenty of upside, but injuries have slowed his progress. He's appeared in only 11 games so far in his career. Unlike Cam Smith, another young corner who has dealt with injuries in Miami, Brents has shown flashes of potential when healthy. If the Dolphins can keep him on the field, this could be a sneaky good addition to the secondary. Let's talk more about what Miami is getting in Julius Brents, because this is not just a routine roster move. This has real potential upside for the Dolphins secondary. Brents is a big, physical cornerback, standing at 6'3" and running a 4.53 in the 40-yard dash. That rare blend of size and speed is something you simply can't teach, and it gives Miami a defender who can match up with bigger wideouts that often create problems downfield. If you're a Dolphins fan who was hoping the team would add a defensive back with upside after roster cutdowns, this move should give you some optimism. Miami's cornerback room is already filled with intriguing young names like Storm Duck, Jason Marshall Jr., and Jack Jones, along with the steady presence of Rasul Douglas. Adding Brents to that mix not only strengthens the depth, but also injects another high upside talent into the room. Now, the numbers don't paint the full picture, but they do give us something to work with. In his 11 career games, Brents has logged 565 defensive snaps, allowing a 67.3% completion rate when targeted. He's produced 5 pass breakups, 1 interception, and has given up 3 touchdowns, leading to a passer rating of 109.8 when thrown his way. Those stats aren't eye-popping, but remember, he's still young, still developing, and has barely scratched the surface of what he could become. The bigger story here is what Miami's front office is doing. Chris Grier clearly wanted to improve the secondary, and while Brents may not have been on everyone's radar, he fits the mold of a player with untapped potential. Miami was expected to add at least 1 cornerback, and while there may have been other names in play, Brents brings a profile that makes sense for this defense. Of course, every move comes with a cost. To make room for Brents on the 53-man roster, Miami parted ways with Isaiah Johnson, the undrafted rookie out of Syracuse from the 2024 draft class. It's always tough to see a young player go, but the Dolphins clearly felt Brents provided more immediate value and upside. So here's where the cornerback room stands now. Storm Duck, Jack Jones, Jason Marshall Jr., Rasul Douglas, and Julius Brents. Brents will likely operate best as an outside corner, giving Miami another option on the perimeter as they continue to piece together a stronger, more reliable defensive backfield. Now, let's talk about how Julius Brents actually fits into this Dolphins defense. Realistically, he's not going to slide into the nickel role. Miami doesn't have a clear backup nickel corner at the moment. Rasul Douglas is an outside guy. Brents is also an outside guy. and Ethan Bonner hasn't taken meaningful snaps inside. So if Jason Marshall Jr. were to miss time, the Dolphins would likely adjust by using 3 safeties on the field rather than relying on another true nickel corner. Even with that uncertainty, here's the important part. Miami's secondary is much more balanced and reliable today than it was just 3 or 4 weeks ago. The room has gone from thin and concerning to layered with both veterans and high upside talent. That's the kind of roster development fans wanted to see before week 1. But Brents wasn't the only move Miami made. Alongside his signing, the Dolphins also filled out most of their practice squad, officially bringing in 14 players. Remember, each NFL team can carry 16 practice squad players, with a possible 17th spot through the International Pathway Program. Miami still has some flexibility here, but this first wave of signings already gives them depth across multiple positions. One of the most notable names added was cornerback Cornell Armstrong. Dolphins fans may remember him from the preseason, where he got snaps inside at nickel. His experience could prove valuable if Miami needs an emergency option in the slot, or if Marshall Jr. were to go down. Armstrong could be elevated from the practice squad for a game. And remember, teams are allowed 3 of those call-ups per player during the season. Another key addition is kicker Riley Patterson. Miami confirmed that Patterson will hold down the job for the first 3 weeks of the season against the Colts, Patriots, and Bills. After that, things get interesting. The Dolphins will have to make a decision. Either sign Patterson to the 53-man roster or move in another direction at kicker once Jason Sanders is eligible to return for Week 5 against Carolina. So, between Brents on the active roster and these 14 practice squad signings, Miami has quietly built a much deeper and more flexible group heading into the season. The Dolphins also made a familiar move at running back. Jeff Wilson Jr. is back in Miami. The veteran was released by the 49ers just yesterday, and now he finds himself on the Dolphins practice squad. This signing makes a lot of sense. Miami's backfield is already dealing with depth questions, and with Jalen Wright not expected to be ready for Week 1, the Dolphins needed a steady veteran presence. Wilson knows this offense, knows the playbook, and has already proven he can be productive in Mike McDaniel's system. That experience gives Miami a reliable option they can immediately elevate when the season kicks off. In fact, we already know 2 of Miami's practice squad elevations for the opener against the Colts. Riley Patterson will handle kicking duties, and Jeff Wilson Jr. will be the 3rd running back behind Devon Achane and Ollie Gordon. That gives Miami a balanced trio for Week 1. Speed, power, and veteran stability. The Dolphins didn't stop there. They also brought back a player who quickly became a fan favorite during the preseason, Theo Weiss Jr., the undrafted wide receiver out of Missouri. Many fans were worried another team might snatch him off waivers, but Miami managed to keep him in the building. Weiss impressed with his route running and toughness, and stashing him on the practice squad keeps his development going while giving the Dolphins another young option in the passing game if injuries strike. This combination of experienced veterans and hungry young talent shows how Miami is approaching their roster construction. Protect depth at key positions while keeping an eye on the future. It was no surprise that Theo Weiss Jr. officially returned to the Dolphins practice squad. After showing flashes in the preseason, keeping him in the building was an easy decision. Miami clearly sees long-term potential in him, and it'll be exciting to track his development through this season and into next year's offseason program. On defense, the Dolphins also kept a familiar face, Quinton Bell, a veteran edge rusher with real game experience. Bell brings not only depth on the defensive line, but also special teams value, something every NFL team needs from its practice squad players. Miami loaded up on edge options, and Bell's return gives them someone who knows the system and can be relied on if injuries pile up. At tight end, Hayden Rucci is back as well. Rucci was on Miami's practice squad last season and once again showed solid blocking ability in the preseason. He fits the mold of a true inline tight end, a role that's always important in Mike McDaniel's offense. If players like Tanner Conner, Julian Hill, or Darren Waller struggle or deal with injuries, Rucci could absolutely find himself elevated to the game day roster. In the secondary, Miami kept another intriguing young player, John Saunders Jr., the undrafted safety out of Mississippi. Saunders had a standout moment with an interception in the preseason finale against Jacksonville, and his combination of size, speed, and instincts makes him a developmental piece worth keeping. From the start of training camp, he looked like someone who had a real shot at sticking around, and now he'll continue to grow with the Dolphins. Speaking of safeties, Jordan Colbert is also staying in Miami. Initially kept on the 53-man roster, he was waived earlier to make room for Rasul Douglas, but the Dolphins quickly moved to keep him on the practice squad. The former Rhode Island Ram has made it clear he wanted to remain in Miami, and now he'll provide depth and competition at a position where Miami has worked hard to improve. With Saunders and Colbert in the fold, the Dolphins now have multiple young safeties developing behind their starters, giving the team flexibility and security in case of injuries during the season. Back to the Dolphins practice squad, Miami made several more moves that deserve attention. One of the key names is Braden Daniels, the offensive lineman who spent the preseason with Miami. Daniels had an up-and-down summer, showing flashes of solid blocking technique, but also moments where his development clearly needs time. That's exactly why the practice squad is so valuable. He'll now have a chance to grow within the Dolphins system. If he continues to progress, he could develop into a reliable interior backup as early as next season. On the defensive side, Miami kept another player who turned heads in August, Derek McClendon. The young edge rusher had a strong preseason, generating pressure, recording a couple of sacks, and proving he could consistently get after the quarterback. Fans were understandably disappointed when he was part of the initial roster cuts, but keeping him on the practice squad allows Miami to hold onto his upside without losing him to another team. Pairing McClendon with Quentin Bell on the practice squad gives Miami two intriguing edge rushers they can call upon if needed. It's worth noting one name that didn't make the cut, Grayson Murphy. At the time of this recording, he hasn't signed with Miami's practice squad, nor has he latched on with another team. That makes his situation one to keep an eye on, especially if Miami decides to shuffle practice squad spots in the coming weeks. The big takeaway here is that Miami isn't just stashing players. They're building a group of young, high-upside depth pieces who can step in if called upon and possibly earn bigger roles in future seasons. Rounding out the Dolphins practice squad, let's go over the final group of names. A.J. Henning, the undrafted wide receiver out of Northwestern, earned a spot as Miami's second practice squad receiver. Henning stood out in the preseason with his burst on special teams, showing he can return both kicks and punts with real explosiveness. That kind of versatility is valuable, and keeping him around gives Miami a developmental receiver who also offers immediate return ability. On the defensive line, Alex Huntley, the rookie from South Carolina, sticks with the team. His preseason wasn't flashy, but the Dolphins clearly see potential in him as a depth piece they can continue to develop. Along the offensive line, Josh Peavy, the former Michigan Wolverine, was also retained. Like Huntley, he didn't make major headlines during the preseason, but Miami is clearly prioritizing depth and competition across the trenches. The final name for now is B.J. Adams, the undrafted cornerback out of Central Florida. Adams had a few bright moments in the preseason and managed to earn this practice squad spot. Miami choosing Adams over other fringe players, like Ethan Robinson, who grabbed an interception during preseason, shows they see a skill set they want to keep molding. At the moment, the Dolphins still have two open practice squad spots, plus the option of adding a player through the International Pathway Program. That means potentially 3 more additions could be made. And one name to watch is Byron Matos, who qualifies for that international slot. One surprise so far is that Miami has only added one running back. Jeff Wilson Jr. Chris Grier had hinted that multiple backs might be brought in, but as of now, Wilson is the lone addition. A name like Damon Martinez is still out there and remains an option if Miami decides to bolster that room further. The bottom line? Miami's practice squad is a mix of veteran depth, developmental prospects, and special teams contributors. A smart blend that provides insurance for the active roster while keeping future talent in-house. With only 2 practice squad spots left, the Dolphins don't have much room to maneuver. There are plenty of interesting names still floating around. Grayson Murphy, Mo Kamara, Patrick McMorris, and Andrew Armstrong. But at best, only two of them can be added. And that's not even counting players who weren't part of Miami's preseason roster, like Damon Martinez, who could also be in the mix. The front office will have to make some tough calls in the coming days. The biggest news out of practice: Rasul Douglas finally suited up for Miami after officially signing this morning. He's wearing number 26, and Dolphins fans can now officially picture him lining up in that secondary. On the offensive side, Austin Jackson was back at practice, which is a huge sign for the offensive line. All indications are that he's right on track to play Week 1 against the Colts. Alongside him, Darren Waller also returned to drills. While their participation was limited, both joined in on team reps, not just individual work, which shows real progress. There were some absences worth noting. Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, and Ethan Bonner were not on the field. Bonner, in particular, remains a question mark. At this point, placing him on injured reserve could make the most sense. That move would free up a roster spot for a more immediate contributor, whether it's a tight end, a running back, or depth at another position. Keeping him on the 53-man roster despite limited availability just doesn't seem like the best use of space. The overall takeaway? Miami's roster is coming together nicely for Week 1, but with practice squad spots still open and injury decisions looming, there are a few final moves left to make before the Colts game. Ashton Davis not being placed on IR tells me Miami believes he could return sooner rather than later. That's definitely encouraging. And here's the best part. Fins fans, we've officially moved past the roster cut chaos of the offseason. From here on out, it's all about this 53-man roster and getting ready for Week 1 against the Colts. If you're fired up for kickoff, drop a big "Go Fins" in the comments below. I want to see who's still rocking with us all the way to the end of this breakdown. We've still got 2 practice squad spots open, so expect more moves in the coming days. And as always, when they happen, you'll hear about it here first. Make sure you're subscribed and have that notification bell turned on so you never miss a single Dolphins update. I'll be back tomorrow morning with more news, more analysis, and of course, more Dolphins football. Until then, fins up.